Today I'm going to talk about the Canadian priorities and the people that don't get a parade. This weekend is the jump off of a long weekend here in Canada. Tomorrow is Canada Day, July the 1st, and today we had the biggest festival in Canada for to celebrate the LGBTQ community. So it's been a very eventful weekend. However, there are some of us who did not get to have a great weekend. Talking about Cheryl Sheldon, a 62-year-old who was found by police with life-threatening injuries in her apartment right here in Ontario, and allegedly was killed by her boyfriend because there was no shelter with room to open their doors and keep her safe in Ontario. This story about Cheryl Sheldon was not televised. I stumbled upon this story because I was searching something up on Google and I saw the little bit of attention that this story received. Because there was no room in the shelters designed to protect women who are fleeing from domestic violence, she had no choice but to return to her abuser because there was nowhere else for her to go, and she's lost her life as a result of this. Right now, we have a prime minister who has set an ambitious plan to bring in more than 1.3 million newcomers over the next 3 years in support of its post pandemic growth. But for political reason, the Prime Minister has vowed to allow entry of this number of people uh, to a certain ethnic group into Canada. What that means, it leaves no room in shelters for women who are fleeing domestic violence, such as Cheryl, or for families due to the drastic cost of living with nowhere to go. While the whole city was celebrating and preparing for the LGBTQ parade today, the same day on Friday, June the 28th, Global News covered a story about a Canadian family with three small children who have been forced to live in a tent camp. They cannot find refuge in a family shelter because they are all filled. The newcomers from a certain ethnic group are given priority, although families such as the ones demonstrated here in this photo have worked all their lives and contributed to Canada by paying taxes and working have now been reduced to staying in tent camps with their three small children because all of the shelters are filled. There are entities such as the Second Chance Foundation where women could flee from domestic violence um, that's awaiting them at home. However, women can no longer trust that they have a place of refuge anymore because of an overcrowded system. It says here one of these entities is called the Second Chance Foundation. It says in their caption, fleeing from abuse, homeless, or need housing support, seek out the help you need as there are shelters around Toronto and Greater Toronto area that may provide the timely help that you need. Seeking refuge is often the last step, but maybe your next step But because of this overcrowded shelter system, a lack of affordable housing, women like Cheryl do not have this guarantee anymore. There was a survey conducted by Lise Martin, who's the executive director of the Canadian Network of Women Shelters and Transition Homes. And the survey says it's rare that a woman will show up on the doorstep of a shelter where it's a first incident or she hasn't tried different alternatives. It says here also women seeking shelter from abuse are often doing so out of a very real sense of terror for their lives and the safety of their children and themselves. These are a list of shelters that are designed to protect women who are fleeing and running for their life. But these shelters are all full, with mainly with newcomers from only a certain ethnic group. This is our mayor, Olivia Chow, and the Honorable Marcia Ian. They do not return phone calls and support causes unless it's a cause of their choice. Social issues such as homelessness, poverty, and hunger are not their first priority. Marcia Ian is the local MP in one of the 13 priority neighborhoods in Toronto, yet she does not return emails or phone calls from any of her constituents. You might ask, what is a priority neighborhood? Well, the City of Toronto has identified 13 priority neighborhoods. They're described as neighborhoods where there's high concentrations of residents who are socially and economically vulnerable and who may experience transportation related barriers and mobility poverty. So what happens here is this is Justin Trudeau and our current mayor of Toronto having a great time supporting one of the previously marginalized groups. But when you focus on the inclusion for one group of marginalized people, that creates inequity. Therefore, it is true. Equality can never be achieved without the foundation of equity that removes all barriers. And this Canadian government doesn't make it a priority to remove barriers for everybody, all of the people who are living with exclusion, who are living being marginalized, who are living being ignored by those designated to help these people, to help people like Cheryl Sheldon, or families that are homeless living in tent camps because the rent is too high and it keeps getting higher and higher, to help the poor who are struggling living in the street because they can't afford to eat and cannot afford to live. Why is it that the priority is only focused on one ethnic group? Why is the priority only focused on showing public support for a group that was previously marginalized? You cannot have equality without equity. Inequity is the barrier that removes possibilities to make life equal. And it says here, focusing on the inclusion for one group of marginalized people creates inequity. Therefore, equality can never be achieved without the foundation of equity that removes all barriers. Sadly, this is not a priority here in Canada. We just want to say rest in peace to a woman with no place to run to in Ontario, like many others. Hopefully, the government will pay attention to this crisis in Canada. The question is, are you?